2, 1.
Good evening, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Lisa Townsend, I'm your Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey, and thank you and welcome to our online community meeting for Woking. Now, one of my responsibilities as PCC is to represent your voice to policing and to make sure that you is one of our ways of doing that. So, joining me here in our studio at our headquarters at Mount Brown in Guildford is Chief Constable Tim Meyer and also your local Borough Commander, Temporary Inspector Sandra Carlio. Now, we carried out a series of in-person events before Christmas in all of the 11 boroughs and districts. We were at Goldsworth Park in November, and we wanted to make sure that those who had the opportunity to be able to join us and watch us online as well. So that's why we've replicated all with online meetings as well. You'll be hearing from the three of us about the current priorities for the force, and you'll also have an opportunity to ask questions as well at the end. If you do have a question, please pop it into the comments section, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook at any time during the chat, and I will remind you later on when we've only got a few minutes to go. If we don't get round to hold the Chief Constable months into the job, I appointed him back in January last year. He's doing an absolutely brilliant job, and he is going to talk to you a little bit more that you make every year. And we've been able to 1,000 extra officers as part of the government's Uplift programme. Surrey has an extra 390 younger workforce than normal, and that comes with its challenges as well. And it does need to mean that they will need to be fully trained before they will be out and about in our communities, which I know is where you want to see them as well. As well as holding the force to account, I also have a duty police and crime plan that is written in conjunction with residents and understanding your priorities against women and girls, ensuring safer Surrey roads and strengthening the relationship between Surrey Police and you, our residents. In the last year, my office has awarded over £5 million to local services, and this has included more funding than ever before to prevent violence against women and girls. Been working very closely with the force to improve the response that you receive to antisocial behaviour, which I know is something that matters to our communities, but also to improve the reaction and the response that you receive when you dial 101, something that's really important, I know really matters to you, and which we are already seeing an enormous improvement on, and something that I'm sure the Chief Constable can answer questions on as well. On a national level, I take a lead on road safety and policing and also on mental health. And again, the Right Care, Right Person initiative is something that I'm sure the Chief Constable can pick up on later, and he is taking a lead on that in Surrey. Is higher than it has ever been. As Commissioner, I also oversee the Surrey Police budget and assets, and that includes setting the amount of council tax that you pay towards policing. And of course, it means balancing the cost pressures that we're all facing right now, as well as my goal to provide the Chief Constable with the resources that he needs to maintain the service that you receive. And it does include finding another £17 to £20 million in savings in the next 4 years, and that's not going to be easy. Times are tough, and asking the public for more money is always difficult and not something that I enjoy doing as your PCC. Chief Constable is going to talk to you a bit shortly about his plan and his vision, and that really does concentrate on what policing does best, and that's fighting crime in our local communities. And I know that's what you want us to do as well. And that's what you have told us across these meetings and in our consultation. And I want to make sure that the Chief Constable has the resources that allow him to deliver that for you. I believe that the Chief Constable's plan will boost the service that we all receive in our communities across Surrey. But in order to achieve it, we have to maintain appropriate funding levels for our police teams. And that's why I think very, very carefully before setting the precept every year. If you haven't already done so, you have just a few hours, one more day to complete the consultation that is available online. You can find it in the link below this chat on this page, and also on my office's website and across all of our social media feeds. Please do it just takes a few minutes to let us know your views. It does close tomorrow, so you do have a few hours left to do it. Now, the survey asked you to consider whether you would support a £13 a year rise. £13 is what the government is asking individual forces to raise. £10, £11 or £12 a year, or a figure under £10. The Chief Constable has been very clear with me that an increase of below £10, and that's on an average Band D property, would mean even further savings having to be found by Surrey Police. An increase of between 10 and 13 would mean that Surrey Police would be able to keep pace almost with inflation and keep any cuts to staff to an absolute minimum. The maximum level of £13 will provide the Chief Constable with most of the resources he needs to achieve his plans for the force, although Surrey Police will still need to find at least £17 million of savings over the next 4 years. And it is really important that we find and make every efficiency that we can to ensure that we're giving you the absolute best value for money, for the money that you put in and the taxes that you pay. And your contributions through council tax make an enormous difference to what we're able to do as a force. For every £1 of precept set, Surrey Police receives an extra £500,000 in funding. So setting the precept is not something that I take lightly, and last year the majority of those who took part in the poll voted for a council tax increase to support our policing teams, and I want to know whether you would be able to do that again and willing to. Now, we have had most of the responses in, of course, there are only a few hours left, but I do want to hear your views. You can scan the QR code that's on the screen now and it will take you straight to the survey. But for now, I am going to hand over to the Chief Constable. He's going to outline his plan for you so you can hear why I believe that support for our policing teams is so important over the coming years. Chief Constable.
Thank you, Police and Crime Commissioner, and hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm going to talk to about 10 points which make up my plan for the force, and broadly speaking, they're divided into 3 areas. First of all, I want to make absolutely clear that we are here to fight crime and to protect people. And that means striving to earn trust and confidence. It means making sure that we're here for you when you need us. And it means making sure that we're putting the service of the public before any self-interest. And the very first thing I'd like to mention is our determination to prevent crime and solve problems, because the most important thing that we do in the first instance is to try to ensure that crime doesn't happen. And Surrey has a really good track record in this respect, which well predates my arrival. The force has rightly been praised by the Inspectorate and even won awards for our work with partners in preventing crime and solving problems. But we now need to put that experience to the sorts of problems which present themselves now, notably violence against women and girls, of which there are 3 particular elements I'd like to mention here. The first is domestic abuse. Now, domestic abuse is a particularly dangerous type of crime. It often sees the most vulnerable and the most dangerous together behind closed doors. And when an officer attends a domestic abuse case, it presents a really brief opportunity not only to protect that victim now, but to protect the lives of other victims on whom that perpetrator might prey in the future. We're already seeing our rate of arrest for domestic abuse increase dramatically, and with that the number of people we're charging, which is encouraging. But I can't overemphasise the importance of reporting domestic abuse to us, because we're determined to provide the very best service we can in protecting victims now and in the future. The second element of violence against women and girls I'd like to mention is rape and sexual offences. Now, we know that in the criminal justice system across the country, performance is not where it needs to be in respect either of charging offenders with these types of crime or indeed seeing them convicted at court. And the entire criminal justice system needs to improve in this respect, which is why in Surrey we're working hard to implement a new scheme known as Operation Soteria, which has a number of crucial elements to improve the service we provide to victims and make more thorough and comprehensive the way in which we target suspects for these offences. And finally, I'd like to mention our endeavour to try and ensure that public spaces are safer and feel safer for women, an example of which is Operation Shield, which has been tried in forces elsewhere and we're now piloting in places such as Guildford and Woking and other areas with nighttime economies. And this sees officers, men and women who are specially trained in behavioural detection, keeping an eye out on our nighttime economies and making sure not only that they're ensuring that victims are safe, but they're spotting potential perpetrators who might have travelled to an area with the intention only of doing harm. And we've seen some really encouraging results already in that respect. The next key point is that we need to investigate crime thoroughly. Perfectly obvious, you might reasonably say, as that's one of the things which only the police can do. But we do in Surrey need to do this rather better. And that includes making sure we're following up reasonable lines of inquiry which are given to us by the public, whether that's the report of suspicious activity, the Ring doorbell footage, or the named suspect. And particularly in cases such as shoplifting, where police performance hasn't been where it needs to be in recent years. And we are thankfully seeing our rate of arrest and charge increase swiftly. It really concerns me to hear of people working in shops who are on modest wages, working all hours of the day and evening, ensuring that the best service are provided locally to communities and that they feel unsafe because thieves are operating in their shops. I'm absolutely determined that we do better in that respect than has been the case, and will continue to improve. The third key point is that we must pursue criminals relentlessly. What that means is that where we have a named suspect, they need to be swiftly arrested before they can harm again, and it means making the very best use of the great many powers that we've been given to do things such as take criminal money away from them, to dismantle and disrupt organised crime. It means making the best use of preventative orders in relation to sex offenders, perpetrators of antisocial behaviour, and more besides. We need to provide outstanding victim and witness care. Very often in the cases that we investigate now, stalking, harassment, domestic abuse, sexual offences, the victim is also our only witness, and therefore if we want to make sure that the case is brought to justice, we need to provide them with the very best care and support through what can be a very testing process. And I'm eager therefore to see our rate of victim service, victim satisfaction improve considerably. We need your trust. We need your trust if you're to have the confidence excuse me, to confide in us, because it's your information on which we rely if we are to have the material, the evidence and the intelligence to bring offenders to justice. And I can't expect you to trust us if we don't exhibit the very best standards of ethics and behaviour in the police. And you'll be all too aware, I don't doubt, of the very serious cases of misconduct which we've seen in recent years in policing, and I'm not remotely so complacent as to suppose that we couldn't see that sort of offending in Surrey Police. Indeed, we have seen examples of extremely troubling misconduct in this force as elsewhere. That's why we're working extremely hard to make sure that we have the best standards of vetting, of re-vetting. We investigate complaints and misconduct thoroughly and swiftly, and in those rare cases where we do see officers face a serious sanction, it's almost invariably so that the matter was reported by a colleague, which is encouraging because it shows that police officers expect not only to exhibit the best standards of behaviour themselves, but positively to stand up against it when they see poor behaviour in others. I want our police service to reflect the communities whose consent we need to serve them. That means trying to be an organisation which is diverse, which is inclusive, but most importantly where people feel they can belong and fulfil their potential, whatever their race, religion or background might be. And I don't aspire to that simply because we want to achieve particular statistics. It's because I want to recruit people from all walks of life, because I know that it is in all walks of life where we will find the potential police officers, investigators, community support officers, communications experts, analysts, forensic scientists who we need to provide you the very best service we can and fight crime and protect people. As the PCC has said, we do need to save a lot of money over the next few years. That's because the police, in common with other organisations, is subject to pressures such as inflation, interest rates rises, wage increases and so on. And that means I have to ensure that my police force is working productively and spending your money wisely. Your money that has been earned and which might have been spent on you or your family, but has instead gone to the state through local or central taxation. That money has then been entrusted not to education or health or defence, but to me as your Chief Constable, and I need to ensure, therefore, that our contracts, our technology, our processes, and much more besides, is managed as productively and wisely as possible. The final 3 points. We need to be there for you when you need us. Policing is a service which needs to be there for people when things are at their worst for you. We need to be very much at our best, however pressurised things might be. And that means that officers race to things which many would race from, and they see things most days which most wouldn't see in a lifetime. They need to be ready to respond to you according to your needs, and our performance in respect of response has not been where I would wish it to be in recent years. However, that's not to say that real efforts haven't been made to improve things, nor indeed that things aren't improving. Our inspectorate rightly criticised our 999 and 101 performance, but we're now seeing that really improve as a result of the efforts of staff and leaders in the organisation. Part of the problem was the challenge of recruiting in a really challenging employment market, such as Surrey, which is expensive to live and where the pay in the public sector is relatively modest. But I'm pleased to say that our contact centres and our control rooms are better staffed. We've got people who have joined us and who are now heroically responding to your calls, and with that our performance is really now beginning to improve. But we need to improve it still further, and that means creating the capacity to ensure that you get the best service. And as the PCC alluded to, that means introducing a new scheme known as Right Care, Right Person. Very often over the last decade, we've seen police officers and staff increasingly have to deal with those in mental health crisis. And of course, there are many such crises which overlap with crime, and we need to respond to those swiftly and professionally. But in a great many cases, no crime is alleged or disclosed, and it might be that a police officer with only modest training in mental health is not the best person to meet that person's need in their moment of crisis. So that's why we are working hard with colleagues in mental health, the health services, the ambulance and the local authority to come up with the Right Care, Right Person scheme, which will both ensure that those with mental health needs get the very best service, but also free up police officers to get on with dealing with the also very risky things which need to be dealt with and can only be dealt with by the police, such as domestic abuse, burglary, rural crime, and plenty more besides. My second to last point is that we need to be resilient and we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared to help other police forces who might need to deal with large-scale disorder. We need to be ready to deal with protest, which might arise spontaneously on our road network or at a major event such as the Epsom Derby. We need to be ready to deal with everything from a pandemic to a cyber attack. And with that in mind, colleagues in Surrey Police are always working through the things that we might need to be ready to respond to. And finally, as I've said, policing is tough, and our police officers and police staff need to be resilient. And when we have new officers join, and I get to meet their parents as the officers march and pass out at the end of their training, I feel a keen sense of obligation to make sure that we look after their daughters and sons in order that they can look after you. So that's why we're having plenty of focus on officers' health, fitness and safety, because by keeping our officers healthy, fit and safe, they are a resilient crime-fighting workforce able to serve you to the best of their ability. So thank you for listening to me, and I'll now pass over to your Borough Commander for more of the local information in which you're no doubt very interested.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Sandra Carlier. I am the Borough Commander for Woking. I'm just going to run through a few things that we've been doing over the last few months at Woking and introduce you to some of my team. So my Woking neighbourhood team consists of 7 police officers and 4 police community support officers, along with 2 sergeants. We also work alongside 2 youth engagement officers, an antisocial behaviour specialist, licensing officer, special constables, volunteers, data analysts and problem-solving tactical advisors. My team at Woking have had some staffing challenges in the past year, but I've now been able to recruit 2 further police officers who will be joining the team next month. This means that I am now able to dedicate areas of the borough to police officers and police community support officers. They will be able to target local issues and be a point of contact for the residents. They are already setting up meetings in your areas and advertising the dates and times on the Woking Facebook page. For those of you who don't use Facebook, we will also advertise the meetings on community boards, in the local supermarkets and in local churches. We are further supported by a team of response officers who respond to 999 calls, as well as numerous specialist departments and investigators. So what can you expect from the Woking neighbourhood team? So the Woking neighbourhood team review incidents which are reported into Woking, and we really encourage you to report any incidents of concern you have to us, because this helps us to build a picture of local issues and helps us to directly target the issues you raise. We can also bid for specialist resources from other departments to help support us. We strive to build relationships with everyone who resides in our borough. We are currently building relationships with our local shops. We have set up regular meetings with managers and staff, and we've called this Shop Watch, and have initiated plainclothes operations in and around the local stores. The team have conducted visible patrols in Woking Town Centre in the weekends leading up to Christmas to ensure the safety of residents and visitors enjoying a night out in Woking. We are aware of antisocial behaviour in Woking Town Centre, which involves street drinkers. We have been working with local businesses and the council and are successfully tackling this behaviour. We have successfully enforced a community protection notice for a persistent beggar in the Knapp Hill area, and we have been successful at court and completed multiple property closures in Woking. Property closures resolve neighbourhood disputes but also protect vulnerable people from being cuckooed. We were made aware of numerous graffiti tags in the town centre and in the Byfleet area, and we have arrested a suspect who is currently on bail whilst further inquiries are being made. And we've recently patrolled with our neighbourhood watch team in order to identify vulnerable properties and give crime prevention advice to residents. So our Woking priorities for 2024. We want to continue to build our relationships with local businesses and local residents, and there are further operations planned to support business crime in the future. We want you all to know and recognise your local dedicated officer and PCSO and see them visibly patrolling your area. We want to effectively tackle antisocial behaviour in its early stages as the weather starts to improve, and encourage you all to support this by reporting any concerns you have to us. We are starting to arrange cyber crime awareness events aimed at the most vulnerable of our community, and we will let you know the locations and dates. We are working with our intelligence team to assess some recent intelligence, and once we have done this, we will be approaching the courts for warrants. We had some very successful evenings in the autumn working with our Vanguard unit, targeting antisocial and illegal driving, and we are planning some more of these in the spring. We hope this gives you a good insight into the work we are doing in the community of Woking. We we hope this gives you a good insight into the work we are doing to keep the community of Woking as safe and happy as possible. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Sandra. So we've got about half an hour for questions now. So if you do have a question, either for the Chief Constable or for your Borough Commander, please do pop it in the comments section, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook Live. And I've got a few questions already that I'm going to start off with. So at the in-person event, there were some questions about the best ways to contact Surrey Police. For those who are watching, I wonder, Chief Constable, if you could start. Could you explain a little bit more about the different ways that people can get in touch with us? And then something that comes up, and we've seen it come up quite a lot, when should the public call 999?
Thank you. So to deal with the first point, I would far rather that people erred on the side of caution when it comes to phoning 999. And when a crime is in progress, when you need someone now, when there is a real immediate risk to someone's safety, of course you should call 999. And we're far more likely to regret you not calling 999 than we are you're calling when it turned out ultimately not to be necessary. The call taker can use their own good judgment in respect of what response might be required. So I wouldn't want anyone to be concerned about troubling us in those circumstances. Now, Surrey, long before my time, had thoughtfully put together a very broad range of ways of contacting us beyond those conventional means, because of course you have telephone 101 service, and our performance in respect of waiting times for 101 hasn't been where it needed to be for some months, but in the last couple of months has been improving dramatically. And you can also contact us via our digital 101 services and also via our monitored social media channels as well. So there's a very broad range of ways of contacting us. You can be very confident of getting through. Now, we do from time to time have concerns from the public, different ends of the demographic spectrum, that not everyone might want to contact us online, some might not want to telephone, and it's with that in mind that we have such a broad range of ways of making contact with us. So hopefully that deals with the question in the broad sense. I don't know if there's anything else.
That's really helpful, Chief Constable, thank you. A resident has told us they expected to see a bigger police presence after a series of burglaries that took place in October and November last year in the borough. Now, burglary is one of the issues that's coming up in my council tax survey as one of the top issues that people want to see a good response on. I wonder, both Borough Commander and Chief Constable, Borough Commander first, I wonder, could you outline some of the activity that is taking place in and around Woking, Byfleet, Knapp Hill and the areas around burglary? And then Chief Constable, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more, and you've talked about it a bit in relation to your plan and your vision, the work that as a force you think, what's working, what do we still need to do around burglary?
So from a borough perspective, we have been out with our neighbourhood watch team. We've been out on 3 different occasions in the evening, and we've identified properties that might be at risk of burglary. If the residents are in, we've knocked on the door and explained, about that, and obviously offered visits from our design and out crime officers to help them make their premises safe. We've also, for the houses where people weren't in, we've put leaflets through the door. And in Woking, we've actually managed to get a discount on a product called Selector DNA, which is where you can mark items that are of value to you. And the discount is a 10% discount. So if a Woking resident wants to go on to the Neighbourhood Watch for Woking onto their web page, they will be able to look for the code and be able to buy the test at a reduced cost. And marking your property, your valuables, is a higher chance of getting them back if they're found to be if they're stolen.
Yeah.
So just a few points on burglary, if I may. So first of all, burglary overall, not just in Surrey, but nationally, has been reducing for some years. Please don't think for a moment, therefore, that I'm complacent about it, but it is nevertheless important context to note that it has been going down. And the reason it's been going down is likely three or four fold. The type of property which used to be targeted in burglary is perhaps somewhat less attractive or easy to dispose of. Detection is in some respects a greater risk for thieves because of the advancements in forensic science and the presence of things such as ring doorbells and people working at home and so on. But lower though it may be than what it used to be, we are still extremely concerned about it because it is such a nasty crime which has such an unsettling effect on people and their families. And there's much, therefore, which we need to do better. So we need to, first of all, make sure we're getting the basics right in respect of attendance, which we are. We need then to make the very best use of forensic evidence. We need to make sure that we are getting from you the ring doorbell or similar footage which might give us a line of inquiry. We need to make sure, as the Borough Commander has said, that we're then taking preventative steps in areas where crimes have taken place. And I hope you'll be reassured to know that our covert policing teams, whose activity you might not be aware of, work very hard to target organised crime groups and disrupt and dismantle those. And we're going to be seeing, I think, some very encouraging successes at court in that respect. And if we don't catch whoever burgled a particular property, there's a very good chance that we'll get them for another one. And we need then to be better at updating victims to say that we're confident that although we haven't been able to link a thief to their particular crime, that we're confident that we've got the person who was responsible for a series. On the point of visibility, I understand, of course, that where burglaries have happened, it can be reassuring to see a police presence, and it might also reduce the crime somewhat. But we need to think about where it is we put our resources in a way which is going to get the best effect from those resources. And burglary reduction isn't always one of those based on my experience. But hopefully I've reassured you at least about what we're trying to do to make sure that we can stop burglary happening in the first place, and then, importantly, catch and lock up those who do.
Thank you very much. I've actually got a question on visibility. So you mentioned in your presentation, excuse me, some of the less visible roles across the force that support Sandra's local team behind the scenes. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of some of the police staff? And of course, remembering that PCSOs are police staff and that we're very keen to recruit more of them, and why those staff are so vital to the service that we deliver and to getting the right outcomes for individuals and particularly for victims.
It's such an important question because whether it's our call handlers, some of our specialist police staff investigators who are bringing people to justice, the communications team who are ensuring that the right information gets to the public, our forensic experts, the brilliant people who've worked so hard to recruit our extra police officers. One could go on and on. It is true to say that police staff are an absolutely integral operational part of Surrey Police. And whilst we know there is a vital place for visibility, particularly of police officers and police community support officers in our crime hotspots, there are many policing activities which are essential going on behind the scenes. For example, the team who investigates online paedophilia and identifies not only the abusers responsible, but the children who are being abused, not to mention those who work in areas such as domestic abuse, or our economic crime teams dealing with serious cases of fraud where very vulnerable people are targeted by some very serious criminals indeed. I could go on name checking all of the various roles, but it's really important to get that across, that whilst visibility is of great value, all of the people we have working who aren't obviously visible are nevertheless providing a vital service to people for whom the most dangerous place might well be their home.
Thank you very much. I've got a question from Rick on YouTube about armed robbery, which is obviously a really serious crime and not something, thankfully, we see very much of in Surrey. What response from Surrey Police would you, the Chief Constable, expect to see if you were unfortunate enough to have experienced armed robbery? So what response would you expect a resident to receive?
Well, when we think of armed robbery, historically speaking, of course, we tend to think of, by armed I presume you mean actually with firearms, often on commercial premises such as banks, and the increasing security of those premises has made that crime type, thankfully, considerably more rare down the years, and we've seen organised criminals instead in operating according to different methods, targeting different people and places. If you're talking about an armed attack on a private dwelling and a family or a resident, without splitting hairs about the crime, you're probably talking about an aggravated burglary, which is where someone with some sort of weapon of offence commits a burglary, and it's a very serious crime indeed, and it's precisely the sort of crime in respect of which I would expect a very rapid response, because we would want to make sure, first of all, that we were protecting the life and safety and security of the victims. We'd also want to make sure that we were following up every line of inquiry as quickly as possible in the area where the crime had taken place. And then, of course, we would want to see a very thorough investigative response in respect of forensic evidence, eyewitness testimony, CCTV, and also any intelligence which might identify some suspects, because the sorts of people who engage in those activities tend themselves to be already involved in a criminal network, and it may be there's some lines of inquiry that way.
Excellent, thank you very much. And this is, I think this is a bit linked actually, because we do know that when it comes to shoplifting, we have seen a more aggressive approach from criminals at times towards shoplifting, and I was really pleased that we had several shop managers turn up, I think from Knapp Hill area, weren't they, to our in-person meeting in Woking. But clearly we need to do more, and we see this across the county, not just in Woking, to encourage shopkeepers to report burglary, and of course our response to make sure that we're giving the right response. So I wonder, Sandra, if you could tell us a little bit about the work that your team is doing with retailers locally in Woking, and then Chief Constable, if you could tell us a little bit about why it's so important that we tackle shoplifting, and that importance, not just in shoplifting, but overall, of public intelligence and people telling us what's happening. Sandra, if you wouldn't mind.
So following on from the meeting in November, we came up with an initiative in Woking, which we have called Shop Watch. So what we did was we went to all the local shops, the co-ops on the outer areas of Woking, and the Sainsbury's, the Tesco locals, and we invited all the managers and all staff to come to a meeting. We found a premises, a meeting room above the co-op in Woking, which was big enough to house everybody. Invited everyone along and listened to the concerns and how we could make their lives better. So that was, I think that was just before Christmas. We also got quite a good turnout. Probably would have liked a few more, hopefully next time, which we've got another meeting at the end of February, we'll have a few more. And we did a couple of days in and around Woking with officers in plain clothes, and we made a few arrests from shoplifters. We've also repeated our efforts in being able to obtain CCTV from the premises. So we have a spreadsheet now of, so when CCTV has captured the crime, we send our officers out to get the CCTV, bring it back, we upload it onto our system, and then we work from that to try and identify any suspects. And because quite a lot of the time the local shoplifters are known to us. Yes. We just need to identify them.
Yeah, in relation to that particular crime as well. Thank you. Chief Constable.
It really troubles me when people trivialise shoplifting as though it is somehow not a serious offence. Theft is a serious offence, and whilst I appreciate that the victim, technically speaking, might in many ways be a large company, there are other victims in these cases, because the victims and the witnesses are very often lower paid workers who are working early in the morning or late into the evening, often by themselves, to earn some extra money for their family. And it seems to me absolutely right that we should ensure that they feel safe, and communities are built around local shops. And it's no good for confidence in the police if someone who is conscientiously paying for their goods witnesses someone else who isn't. So first of all, as the Borough Commander said, we need to make sure we're working hard to prevent the crime in the first place. But when it's happened, please report it and give us that clear evidence, which often exists in shoplifting through really good CCTV, and we can bring people to justice. It might be that they need help with drug addiction, exploitation from an organised crime group, or other consideration, but that is for us to think about after arrests have been made, and I'm very clear that we will uphold the law as far as theft is concerned.
Excellent, thank you very much. You have a few minutes still to get your questions in if there is something that you want to ask the Chief Constable or the Borough Commander. If we don't get to your question, somebody will get back to you, and you can always contact us, of course, across social media and the phone numbers, as you know. One of the things that's come up in the council tax consultation in the responses that we've received are comments expressing concern that police officer numbers may have to be reduced in order to make savings. Now, Chief Constable, could you outline why that's not the case? That's not something that will happen. Just explain a bit more about why any savings that we have to make, and the savings we are making, aren't coming from police officers.
Certainly, it's a really important question, actually. So we're so pleased that in recent years, Surrey Police, in common with forces across the country, has benefited from what's known as uplift. So this is the dramatic increase in the number of police officers, which is really welcome. That doesn't come without associated costs, but of course it's a nice problem to have. And to use the sort of parlance of the organisation, those resources are ring-fenced, so we are not able to reduce the number of police officers, nor would we wish to. It does, however, place us in the challenging position that with over 80% of our budget being spent on people, when we have to make savings, we have to work really hard to ensure those savings don't come at the cost of the jobs of some of our police staff, who, as we've already established, are providing vital crime-fighting public services. Now, I have a very capable group of people who are working to ensure that by managing our contracts better, getting the best of our technology, improving our processes, and many other good aspects of financial discipline, we will make those savings through means otherwise than losing jobs. But the Police and Crime Commissioner is absolutely right to draw attention to the very real risk of that if we don't manage our resources extremely carefully and conscientiously, but there won't be a reduction in police officers. The PCC also mentioned earlier on that police community support officers are, of course, police staff, and we have lots of vacancies. We're trying very hard to recruit. Therefore, if you or a family member or a friend is public-spirited, great at talking to people, and wants to be the person who takes responsibility to ensure that we target things such as antisocial behaviour, drug dealing, the exploitation of children, and much more, then that's a really good first step into the police and a great vocation.
Excellent, thank you very much. And a reminder, if you haven't already done so, you can respond to the survey, which is open until midday tomorrow, so just a few hours to get your say in, as well as asking you about council tax. It also asks you what issues you would like to see Surrey Police tackle. QR code is on your screens now, and it's also available in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook. And there it is on screen right now. Drug dealing at St Peter's Recreation Ground, Borough Commander in Old Woking, has been mentioned. Is there an update that you can provide to residents?
So obviously after the meeting in November, I asked the officers to pay particular attention to that area. I've had a look at today at the reports from there. I haven't had any since November. But as I said earlier, I'm now able to divide the borough up and have specific officers in specific areas. So there will be an officer and a PCSO for Old Woking. So I'm hoping once they've set up their Meet the Beat that I'm hoping that you will go and meet them and give them information, let them know your problems so that they can specifically tackle the problems that you're reporting in your area. As I say, nothing since November.
No. Okay, that's really encouraging to hear. If that doesn't ring true and you think that there have still been issues in Old Woking, particularly on the recreation ground, please make sure that you are reporting it. I know it's very easy sometimes, particularly when something happens in a public area, for us to feel that somebody else will report it or maybe a neighbour will report it. Every report that we get in matters because it allows us to build a picture. And as Sandra has just explained, it tells us where to put officers. So regardless of how big or small you think the issue is, if you report it to us, then the Surrey Police can handle it. So I'll leave it at that. A couple of other bits. And again, Borough Commander, I'm going to ask you to speak to this as well, particularly locally, but also Chief Constable. Again, antisocial behaviour, a crime that has sometimes been marked as low level, is anything but and can really affect communities and individuals, families, where they live. It can feel like there's no escape from it. I wonder, first of all, Borough Commander, if you could talk a little bit about antisocial behaviour in Woking and what your officers are out doing. And of course, we know that PCSOs are really great as well at contributing to support on this.
So yes, antisocial behaviour is a horrible crime. It affects people in their homes where they should feel safe. So there is a thing called a community trigger. So if you don't feel that enough is being done by us and the local authorities in your area, you can go on to the Surrey Police website or the Woking Borough Council website and look for community trigger, and you can write a report, and then that gets flagged to me and the community safety lead in the council, and then we can work together to reduce the antisocial behaviour in your area. But we do need you to report any antisocial behaviour to us. That way we can allocate resources to tackle that antisocial behaviour, whether it be antisocial driving. That's another thing that we are very keen to clamp down on. We have a unit called a Vanguard unit, which are roads policing officers dedicated to antisocial driving. We have spent a couple of evenings out with them where we've had problems with antisocial behaviour on motorbikes, and that had a massive effect because they know how to take motorbikes off of people that are causing antisocial behaviour on those. So all I can say is, please report antisocial behaviour to us. Look at the community trigger if you don't think we're doing enough. But the more you report, the more of a picture I can get, and the more I can put resources into that area. And as I said before, you will be getting, your local officers will be starting Meet the Beat events where I encourage you to go along, let them know who you are, get to know who they are, and then you'll have somebody that you can turn to report your problems to.
Thank you very much, Borough Commander. And you can find further details about the community trigger on my website as well. All the details are there and how to get in touch. Chief Constable, antisocial behaviour. It's more than antisocial, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is. And of course, it's a broad categorisation which refers to some very serious crimes underneath, actually. Criminal damage, harassment, violence, and more precise. And as the Borough Commander said, it can have a really bad effect on people's safety and their sense of safety. And it also prevents communities from thriving in a way that they should be able to in Surrey. So I can't overemphasise the importance of reporting antisocial behaviour to us and of holding us vigorously to account if you don't think you're getting the response that you need.
Excellent, thank you. I've got one more substantive question. Borough Commander, what is being done to tackle tool theft in Woking?
Tool theft is another serious crime, obviously has a big impact on people's businesses. So we have, as the Chief Constable said, we have people, plainclothes officers. It's another crime like burglary, which prevention is better than trying to catch these thieves is very difficult for us. They usually come from out of area and target a road at a time. So its prevention is better than, is probably the most effective way of tackling this. So if you've got a van with tools in it, obviously I understand you can't take all your tools out overnight. I do understand that. But maybe if you could park your van right up to your garage doors or up to a gate or a fence, so it makes it harder for people to get into your vans. Ring doorbell is a good deterrent. Lights that come on in your driveway, all of those things. So once again, like burglary, deterring them from actually attacking your van is probably more effective than us trying to catch the tool thieves. Although we have had some success lately where we stopped some criminals in an area of Surrey. We did some searches on the premises and we found a lot of tools there, and we've managed to link those tools up to quite a few thefts locally, not just Woking, but force-wide.
Excellent, that's really good news, Sandra, thank you. Anything you want to add to that, Chief Constable?
Well, just to reinforce the Borough Commander's point that the better the prevention measures, the more likely it is that in the course of trying to commit a crime, the thief will do something which makes them more likely to be detected for that crime. And also the importance of actually reporting the crime, because the one piece of intelligence that might apply to that crime could help us solve a series of crime. For example, it might be that there's an activation of an automatic number plate recognition camera which enables us to link offending vehicles. It might be there's some intelligence elsewhere which enables us to put together an operation against a group which might not otherwise be the case. So it's so important we know what is going on. It can be difficult to solve individual crimes, but that doesn't mean that we can't, through the best information, take on an organised crime group through other means, and that could include seizing their financial assets. It could end up looking at them for other offences. There are plenty of things that we can do.
Excellent. Thank you very much to both of you. Thank you very much. Don't forget that you can watch this video back, or you can share it with neighbours and friends living in the area, living in Woking, who may want to also see it. If you do want to contact me or my office, if you want to request a meeting, or there's more that you want to know, you can do so by contacting me on my website. It's surrey-pcc.gov.uk. Thank you to you for watching us. Thank you to the Chief Constable, to the Borough Commander, to Susan, who has been signing along the whole time as well, and to the team here at Mount Brown. Have an excellent evening. Thank you.